Welcome to the Frontlines. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk. If you want to know where real power is building in this market, you stop watching price swings and you start watching who survives the long road to execution. Almonty Industries did not rush, they did not shortcut, and they certainly didn't sell a story they couldn't stand behind. It spent years doing the unglamorous work that most companies never finish in a commodity that the world ignored right up until it could no longer afford to ignore it anymore. Tungsten has quietly become one of the most strategic materials on the planet, critical to defense, critical to advanced manufacturing and emerging energy technologies, and Almonty is one of the very few companies that positioned itself early enough, deep enough, and deliberately enough to matter when that shift arrived. Commercial mining has now begun, which means this is no longer a company asking for belief, they're demanding attention. And that doesn't happen by accident. Joining me is Mr. Lewis Black, CEO of Almonty Industries, the architect behind a build that has now crossed the hardest line in the business, turning years of conviction into operating reality. Lewis, where do we even begin here? There's so many mic drops this month for you.
That was quite an introduction. I don't know if I can even get close to living up to that.
Well, you certainly have, that's for sure. So I think we want to start right at the biggest headline that we have all been waiting for. You have officially begun commercial mining at the Sangdong Tungsten Mine in South Korea. I mean, I can already hear the crowd going wild, let's be honest. So this has been years in the making, and patience is not a currency the market is famous for. We know that. For investors who have followed this story without blinking, what does production actually mean now? Not in theory, not in promise, but in terms of cash flow or credibility and Almonty's pace on the global tungsten map.
Everybody take a deep breath. Okay, this is, like starting up a classic brand new engine. There's a starting process. You've got to put a bit of choke on, you've got to prime the motor, you've got to pump the pedal a little bit, and you just turn it over before you start driving it around a racetrack. So this is now the beginning of the priming of the engine. And as such, of course, I always like when shareholders who I'm close with call me up and tell me some of the appalling things that some of my competitors are saying about me. But you see this face? No longer care. It's I think what's evident is the market has spoken. Our industry has spoken, because bear in mind, we don't, much as I admire and respect traders, we make deals with the actual consumers themselves. We have state development banks supporting us. And all of this has not just happened because, well, I spun a good story once upon over a campfire. This is something that we know intrinsically as an industry. We know all the participants. We know what mines are viable, which mines are not. And most importantly, the single most important fact is this is what we do for a living. And as I've said 1,000 times, if we can make money out of a 136-year-old mine that creaks around the edges in Portugal, imagine what we could do with a modern 21st century equator principled company that we just built. It was formerly the world's largest tungsten mine. So we've got to a point that we knew we were coming to. This is not a big surprise to us. We now start priming the engine before we get onto the racetrack.
Well, once you cross that line and you turn that engine over from builder to producer, the rules change and excuses disappear and every decision gets louder. So just days before production began, Almonty withdrew its base shelf prospectus. That raised a lot of eyebrows, Lewis. So walk us through the thinking here. Why step away from that flexibility right as the company is stepping into its most important chapter?
Well, don't need it. Don't want it. And the fact is that, and this may be a surprise to some of you new viewers, and I'm going to let you into a little secret. I'm the second largest shareholder with my own money. I have no intention to dilute myself unnecessarily. Guess what, everybody? We can actually make money. We've always made money. Now we're going to make a lot more money in this price environment. Why do I want a vehicle to raise money? I don't want anybody's money. We have our own money. And that is the most important dynamic to remember. If your management team is not invested in your company, run for the hills. But The shelf served its purpose. We, of course, are now working with a tier one wirehouse and Bank of America. We have some of the biggest institutions in the business in our stock. Our liquidity in the NASDAQ increases every day, the average liquidity. So we're now trading, I think, 24 million US a day and climbing, which is, when you put that over a year, over a month, is nearly $500 million US a year we're trading. So, we've entered into a sector that we've earned this right to be here. The market concurs. The governments that support us also agree. Our industry agrees. And I felt that the shelf was an unnecessary distraction for something that I never intended to revisit again. So I understood from my own attorneys, no one ever, as a junior miner, which we're no longer, but when we were, ever withdraws a shelf prospectus because it's good for 23 months and you never know, and you should always have that optionality. I said, nope, don't want it. I don't want it. I want that target out of everyone's mind. Now we make money. That's it. We want money, go make it.
You are one for making those big decisions and blowing people out of the water for sure, but that decision also leads directly into the financing here. You raised over $129 million US in an upsize offering. That was a major bomb drop without notice for so many people. Now, this financing landed fast, it landed hard and very loud, and your investors felt that impact for a bit. So tell us why this timing made sense to you with production starting instead of just waiting for the mine to speak for itself.
Well, firstly, because Bank of America were willing to get behind us, and it's pretty much the first strategic metal company they've got behind. And, as they always say, you always look after your firstborn. So it was important that we take that opportunity. Plus, I had a number of institutions that had come into our IPO in July, and because we were so oversubscribed, they never got a meaningful position, and they kept going on and on and on, and they wanted to. Now, the sticker shock was we announced it. Oh, and the stock sold off and the blogs were alive with the sound of let's hang Lewis. But when this thing closed on that Wednesday, what did you see? You didn't see the stock go below the offering price. In fact, you saw exactly the opposite, which then confirmed what I was saying. This placement went into the hands of people who care, who are committed, who are long-term holders, not the usual fly-by-night, cast your net wide, see if anyone going to give you any money as a junior miner and take that discount and flush it to make a return. These guys are serious. Bank of America is serious. You have to now get out of this thought process that we have anything to do with the rest of our sector. We've now migrated into a much bigger and transparent opportunity. We are the only listed tungsten company on the NASDAQ that produces tungsten. We're the only one supported by governments. We're the only one supported by essentially our sector. And now, of course, are some of the biggest institutions in the country. The stock never traded below the offering price since we did it, which showed absolutely categorically that once again, I was being completely honest with my shareholders. And two, the strength that's in this company now. And the fact that the tungsten price keeps going up doesn't hurt either.
So let's actually continue talking about the money here, Lewis, because investors, they've heard enough about general purpose, corporate purposes across the board from many companies. That will last them a lifetime. So where does this capital go first? What does it speed up? What does it strengthen? And what confidence has it given you that maybe you didn't have before?
Well, as I said, we raised the money because we wanted to get more involved with Bank of America. We hope very much their analyst is now going to initiate. We wanted to go into the NASDAQ because remember, in January, we've become a full reporting issue in the SEC. So our primary listing is moving from the TSX to the NASDAQ. And so it's very important to have a very big and solid and firm foundation in which to launch into that additional liquidity we can now attract. And Bank of America, of course, is very well suited to do that. The use of proceeds, general working capital, I completely agree with your point. I can't stand it when I read that. But it's a convenience because you always want to be able to pivot. Unlike other companies that say general working capital, we actually care about how we use the money because, well, it's my money in terms of the money I put in. So we're going to use this capital to accelerate the tungsten oxide plant. We're going to further out the moly drilling, the molybdenum drilling of the mine in Korea. We're going to look to open now. We're doing the drilling already for level 4 in Panascara. And of course, the new addition to the family in Montana. We can do, obviously, most of the work there. Are we going to spend all the money in the next 2 weeks? Absolutely not. Are we going to make sure that it's well protected and preserved? Yes. But it enables me to accelerate some of our growth strategies, which is, of course, very important. Hence why I will be adding one more person to our C-suite, a chief development officer of extraordinary caliber, just like with Steve Allen, who joins us as COO. So, and then my C-suite is done. I don't like spending huge amounts of money on big C-suites. I think that's really a very junior mining trait, to be surrounded by people who worship the ground you work on and follow you around like puppy dogs at conferences. But no, I've now identified the people that I need to actually ensure that we meet our targets. And to be honest, there's a lot of work for one person to do. And you know, I'm the kind of person, I work 7 days, no problem. I don't take vacations until I've executed the plan here, which is all of my shareholders walk out of this naming their firstborn children after me for the amount of money they're about to make. I'm staying this to the whole distance.
I love that. And for all of those that are looking for a name for their firstborn, it's Lewis Black, Black, just in case they were wondering. Now, Lewis, one of the things that stood out here was not just how much you raised, but who showed up to write the checks. Now, you've touched on it a little bit. This was not tourist capital. These were serious names, and a raise like this always changes who's sitting at the table. So why don't you tell us who stepped in? Who are the new investors behind this financing?
SEC rules. I can't. But let's put it this way. You know, the bulk of what we did was with only a very small number of people, and none of that stock hit the market on Wednesday when we closed. That should tell you everything you need to know about how they view their future with us. They are not looking for a quick return. What they're looking for is to continue to support what essentially and ultimately, and whether people agree with this or not is of no concern to me, but ultimately support and see us thrive as the only real go-to solution for tungsten in the West in the short and medium term period of time. That's it.
Okay, we'll pivot here. We'll pivot away from that, but I want to hit management quickly here. You brought in Stephen L. Allen that you just mentioned very quickly. He's a retired United States Brigadier General as your new COO. That's not a simple operational hire, Lewis, and it caught attention across the board. So what's the real story behind bringing him into the core of the company?
Well, firstly, given that nobody knows anything about how to mine tungsten except for one mine in Austria and then us in Portugal, it makes no sense to bring somebody, another mining legend, COO, into the company with all their great ideas, because quite frankly, they don't work. What I was looking for was somebody who could be self-disciplined, a rarity in the mining space, someone who's self-sufficient, equally rare in the mining space, and somebody who had a track record of execution of projects, someone who can take a punch list and work their way through it and execute on the back of that, not needing my constant undivided attention to manage and supervise them. The fact that also General Allen has worked extensively in Korea is he understands obviously the cultural elements of working there, but we have Montana to look at, Portugal to look at. I would adore to be able to spend my time more in operations, but I have to also accept the fact that as we now move the primary listing into the NASDAQ, a lot of my time is taken up presenting to my investor base and to new investors as we grow rapidly in terms of market visibility. And I couldn't imagine anyone better than Steve Allen to assist me here. Of course, we spend time together, we go through things, but I wasn't looking for another mining guru. You know, I used to be CEO of this company, or I'm not interested. What I wanted was a guy who actually knew how to execute, had spent his entire professional career executing punch lists, and somebody who could stand on his own 2 feet and not be, the typical junior miner, where's my options package this year? So I've been incredibly impressed with General Allen. He is exactly as you imagine he would be.
Well, talk about an intro. My intro for you, I got to learn something from you because that intro was amazing. Let's switch the topic away from all of this for a quick moment and pull the lens all the way back. Fusion energy has moved from science fiction to boardroom budgets. Real money is also chasing real breakthroughs, so tungsten sits quietly in the background of that story. However, it is essential. So as fusion technology accelerates, how does that reshape long-term tungsten demand, and where does Almonty stand if the future shows up sooner than expected?
Well, I take the view like AI. AI now is very much front and center in these semiconductors that are doing incredible things, including, of course, accelerating fusion development. And my response is always the same. You're welcome. That's it. The fact is that tungsten gas they pump into semiconductors was what was the quantum leap that these semiconductors needed. It was that innocuous, absurd, niche, quirky application of a tungsten hexafluoride gas changed the whole landscape in AI. And fusion, has always been obviously one of those great stories of tungsten because, of course, there's no other metal on the planet that can contain the reaction that you can dissipate the heat with. And you're going to need an awful lot of tungsten, and you're going to have to keep replenishing that tungsten in these plants as they run. So yes, it offers an opportunity where, for tungsten, in terms of tungsten, it's an extraordinary development. What I can say with absolute certainty, that if fusion comes online, the price of tungsten will be at such levels that I will finally, and I'm enormously grateful for this, get a whole new set of new friends. That's how I look at this. The old ones, I never liked them that much.
What am I, chopped liver?
They're out. They're all out. I'm getting all new friends. They're going to drink their tea with their pinky finger out. It's going to be fantastic. That's all I can say. We do not have enough capacity of tungsten in its current iteration to provide even close to what fusion is going to require, which means anybody who knows how to do this is going to become vastly important for this quantum leap into a clean energy source, rather like what's happened with AI, except on a much, much larger scale.
My gosh. Well, I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen. Louis, this has been such a defining run of announcements for your company and a defining conversation, bringing the puzzle all together. Thank you again for sitting with us. I have a feeling there's some audience members that are having an aha moment right now, and I'm looking forward to our next catch-up soon.
Thank you, Lyndsay, for having me. Thank you.
Again, that was Louis Black, CEO of Almonty Industries, trading on the NASDAQ under ALM and on the TSX under AII. Don't forget, they are also in the Frankfurt under ALI1. This is no longer a story about potential, it's a story about execution. Materials have become strategic assets. Execution has become the separator, and Almonty is no longer knocking, signaling, or positioning. They're operating from inside the gate. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk with Appeton Media right here at the Market Frontlines. Stay sharp, stay informed, and stay tuned right here. The story is only just beginning.